ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः। देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः। So we see we are entering the 8th chapter now. The 8th chapter is called Akshara Brahma Yoga, the chapter of imperishable Brahman. In the 7th chapter, the Lord spoke about His higher nature, His lower nature, and how He manifests in the whole world. And He holds the entire world together like a string that holds the entire necklace together. Then He also spoke about the 4 types of devotees, what is Maya, how to overcome Maya. And the last 2 verses of the 7th chapter, He introduced about 6 terms which Arjuna did not know. So he said in the last 2 verses, Jara Marana Mokshaya Mam Ashritya Yatanti Ye. To get out of this cycle of birth and death, those who seek the refuge in the Lord and they strive, Te Brahma Tad Vidu Krishnam Adhyatmam Karma Chakhilam. They know that Supreme Brahman completely. They know what is Adhyatma and they know what is karma. So 3 expressions, Brahma, Adhyatma and karma. And the next verse, Sadhibhutadidaivam mam Sadhyagnyam cha ye vidu. Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva and Adhyagnya. Another 3 terms. So these 6 terms were used by Bhagavan in the 7th chapter at the end. Brahma, Karma, Adhyatma, Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva and Adhyagnya. And he said, Prayana kale pichamam te vidu yukta chetasaha. Such people will know me even if at the last moment they get to know me, they are freed. And who are these people? Yukta chetasaha. Their minds and intellects are united. In their whole life, there is integrity in thought, word and deed. Such people will come to know me and these 6 aspects and become free. So now these 6 terms which are used, they are absolutely unknown to Arjuna. So he begins his 8th chapter with that question, that what are these? So he says, Kim tad brahma kim adhyatmam kim karma purushottama adhibhutam cha kim proktam adhidaivam kim uchyate. What are these? Adhiyajnam katham kotra dehesmin madhusudana prayana kale cha katham jneyosi niyatatmavihi. Now in these two questions he is asked basically, what are these 6 things that you have said? And what is the last one? The 7th question he has asked is, prayana kale cha katham. At the moment of death, how can somebody know you? Neyosi niyatatmavihi. Because at the time of death there is supposed to be a lot of pain and difficulty, and at that point how are you saying that they can know me? So these 7 questions he is asked. Now this 8th chapter is an answer to these 7 questions. So this 8th chapter is also called Akshara Brahma Yoga because this is the chapter where there is a understanding about that imperishable Brahman as the substratum of the world and as the self within. And there is also meditation on this Brahman. So non-dual contemplation on the self, how it is done, that is explained in this chapter. How to consciously exit the body, that is also explained in this chapter. What is that same imperishable Brahman is also indicated as Pranava or Om. So some people call this chapter also as Pranava Yoga. Because Om is also explained elaborately here. Pranava Brahma Yoga. Brahman as Om. And some people also call this chapter as Mahapurusha Yoga. Who are these great minds or great masters who have known all the 6 aspects and experienced oneness with the Supreme? So these are different aspects which are covered in this chapter. But if we want to say one focus point of this whole chapter is that it makes a person meditate on that which is imperishable, on the Supreme Lord, on the Supreme Oneness. Dhyan and Jnana, they have a very deep connection. In spiritual life, one may read many books that can attain Jnana, and that is necessary to attain Jnana. But the internalization of that Jnana will only happen through Dhyan. How much ever we know that happiness is not in the world outside, I have to sit down and make my mind quiet. The natural joy that a mind which is quiet experiences, it is that joy only which will give the conviction to this person that yes, happiness is not in the world outside. 2 aspects are necessary so in this. One is that I must be intellectually convinced so that I am able to sit down. You see, what happens is either of the 2 aspects are missing. There are some people who will just by force sit down, by mechanical practice sit down. But they don't have the conviction that happiness is not in the world. So the mind keeps wandering. There the problem is Jnana is not enough and one has not done reflection on that Jnana. Then there are people who keep on studying. Book after book. But you ask them, how much do you meditate? Nothing. I have 20 books on meditation, Swamiji. But how much do you meditate? Not even 20 minutes. It will not help. Both are important. And in these 2, the second one is more important. Second one cannot happen without the first one properly. But if the first one is there, Jnana is there, but the meditation I am not sitting and doing, nothing will work. Not a little bit of spiritual transformation will happen. So I have to sit down and learn to withdraw the mind, withdraw the senses, learn to become single pointed. What is surrender? All those things happen when I sit down and do it. So in this chapter, one aspect is the the vision is definitely there, the Gyan of Akshara Brahma is there, but there is also the Dhyan on that Akshara Brahman or on Omkar. So one may call this chapter similar to the 6th chapter, Dhyan Yoga. There it is formally explained with all the procedures and the steps and the preparation, obstacle and all that. Now that is over. Now it is in this 8th chapter how the devotee meditates. And there are so many different ways to meditate on the Lord. So there are many different ways. Now in this Bhakti Yoga section, 6 chapters, from chapter 7 to 12, you will find different ways to meditate. So Akshara Brahma Yoga is not only talking about imperishable Brahman, the knowledge of Brahman, it is also going to motivate us that how do I contemplate on that non-dual Brahman. Because when I do that, then I also get out of the body identification that I am this body. Otherwise, intellectually I may say I am Brahman, but the bhavana, the feeling is I am the body. How that bhavana changes? Only when I sit and meditate. That's why a person may have learnt very less. But if that person is consistently doing meditation, that person will realize faster than somebody who has learnt many books, but his journey has not even started. Because it's only when we try to sit down and withdraw the mind do we even realize what are the issues with the mind. Where all the mind wanders. It wanders either because of habit or because there is somewhere attachment which is there, because of which it wanders. So I can't even know so many of these things till I sit down and meditate. So this chapter gives a lot of points about that. Also one speciality of this chapter is that this talks about death and what happens at the time of death and what happens after death. And also about rebirth. So when a person departs, just before a person departs also this chapter can be chanted. If there is one chapter or you don't have much time, then even one shloka of this chapter, which is Antakalecha Mameva, that must be chanted. To remind that person that think of that imperishable, even at this point in time, don't think of anything else. Because that is what is the essence of life. Everything is going to remain here only. So either I can chant this whole chapter, or I can chant that one particular shloka while the person is sick and in a few days, a few moments are left. And even after the person departs, this is a chapter to be chanted. One is chapter number 2, which speaks about immortality of the soul, etc. And then is chapter number 8, which is this. Because this speaks about different gatis, Chandra Gati, Surya Gati, after the person departs. So all that we will see as it comes. So now coming to these questions of Arjun, 7 questions he has asked. What is Brahman? What is Adhyatma? What is Karma? What is Adhibhuta? What is Adhidaiva? What is Adhyagna? And how to know him or how to know the Lord at the moment of departure also. Now let us see what is the answer. In the 3rd verse he gives the answer. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Svabhavodhyatma Muchyate Bhuta Bhavodbhavakaraha Visarga Karma Samnitaha. So he says, Bhagavan explains here, Aksharam Brahma Paramam. Brahman is Aksharam, imperishable and supreme. Supreme, imperishable is Brahman. See, the word Brahma has many different meanings. One meaning is Brahmaji, the creator. Second meaning is the Vedas. The Veda also is called as Brahma. The 4 Vedas, they are also called Brahma. Then Om is also called as Brahma. Om iti ekaksharam Brahma, it is said in another Upanishad, is a single syllable indicating the Brahman. So Om or the Veda or sometimes the Prakriti also is called as Brahma. So Parabrahma and Aparabrahma. Aparabrahma means Prakriti or the Maya or the nature. So the word Brahma has different meanings. And that's why it is necessary to clarify what that means here. And that is one of the reasons why the Gita must be studied with a particular teacher. Not only the Gita, any scripture. Today translations are available. But if that person who is translating has not learnt it properly, then again the translation will be having a problem. So Aksharam Brahma Paramam, it is said. It is the imperishable supreme truth. So literally the etymology of Brahman we saw in the 7th chapter in the beginning when we were talking about the concept of God. That time we said Brihatvat Brahma, that which is the biggest. Meaning that which is not limited by space, meaning that which is all pervasive, which is not limited by time, which means it was there yesterday, today, tomorrow, and it will not change. And which is not limited by object, meaning it is the same in every object. Otherwise the thermos is not the same as the phone is not same as the plate. Each object limits the other. But what is the same in all is that consciousness or existence, and that is imperishable. The name and the form will perish. So that imperishable, changeless, infinite cause of the whole universe is called as Brahman. Aksharam Brahma Paramam. And why is it called cause of the universe? Because that which is imperishable only can be the cause of the universe. Anything which is perishable cannot be the cause of the universe. Because by itself that time and space are a product of the universe, the creation. So only that which is imperishable, changeless, is beyond time, beyond space. So Bhagavan defines, the first answer he gives, what is Brahman? Brahman means that which is imperishable, absolute truth, from which the universe came, in which it stays, in which it goes back, which is beyond time, space, causation, which is changeless, hence it is imperishable, and it is infinite. So Aksharam Brahma Paramam. Then he says Svabhavaha Adhyatmam Uchyate. And what is Adhyatma? Second question. So he says Svabhava is Adhyatma. Now again the word Svabhava here does not mean what we understand as the nature of a person. His Svabhava is very sattvic, very calm and peaceful. His Svabhava is very rajasic, very agitated, disturbed, angry. Not that. Svabhava here means Adhyatma is defined as Svabhava, meaning that because of which the body, mind, intellect, everything is functioning, that spirit in us is called as Svabhava. That's our true nature actually. Swa means one's own, Bhava means being. One's own being. What is my being? I don't know. I only know adjectives about myself. That's also not me actually. Adjectives about my equipment I know. Body is tall, dark, handsome, young, thin, old. Identifying with the body, I think I am tall, dark, young, handsome, thin. That's an equipment. It's like saying this phone is iPhone 5s. So if I say this phone is iPhone 5s is proper, but if I say I am iPhone 5s, if anybody asks me, describe yourself, then I say, I am rectangle in shape, I am black in color. How ridiculous that sounds. But that's what we are doing. So I don't know my nature. So in Vedanta here, in this 8th chapter, it is Swabhava, one's own being. What is one's own being? The self. Adhi Atma. The word Adhyatma is so beautiful. Adhi means inner. Atma means self. So Adhyatma is the knowledge of the inner self of all the beings. Even the word spiritual for that matter. Adhyatma is translated as spiritual. So that which is related to the spirit is a spiritual. Which spirit? The imperishable spirit. Not that which takes us to the perishable. Not that spirit which gives a different kick. But spiritual means the inner self, the spirit which is imperishable in me. That is called as Adhi Atma, which is my own self. The beauty of the word Atma is Atma means self. The word I, in English what we use the word I, is actually Atma in Sanskrit. So just like we say I am coming, there the word I is meaning Atma, meaning I, the self, I am. I am coming there in the English word we say I as an individual I am coming. But what I mean to indicate is that just like that word I is referring to this as me, in the same way the word Atma is referring to the real me. The synonym of that is that English usage of I. But that I today is identified with the body, so we think I am this body. Who is the real I? That is what is to be known. The real self is to be known. We don't even inquire. So suppose we say that ask this question, who am I? Now that question sounds very meaningless to us. What is this, who am I? And even if we sit to do who am I inquiry, after some time the mind just wanders away. Okay, mind says Ramana Maharshi was the founder of Who Am I Inquiry, and Tiruvannamalai I have not gone, It seems it's a very nice place, It's a beautiful one. Mountain is there, and I think if I go at 5, on this particular day, and I think we have to get up at 5 in the morning and do some pradakshina. It will take about 8 hours to do pradakshina. What you are doing? Who am I inquiring? The mind doesn't even inquire into that who am I, because it has taken for granted that I means what? I am the body, I am the mind, I am the intellect. What is there to ask in this? There is no I, no question. So that's why he says here Swabhava. What is your true being? Swabhava. That is Adhyatma, meaning the true self within. So in the first 2 questions, he explained one is the cause of the whole universe is that supreme imperishable Brahman. And that Brahman actually is in my own heart as the self, as my own Swabhava. Then he says, what is karma? One may even wonder, what a question Arjuna is asking. Whole chapter on karma you got over and everything, and now he is asking, what is karma? But see, Bhagavan did not use the word karma in a normal sense. He used the word in the 7th chapter in a different context. So now Arjuna wants to know, what did you mean by karma? Because it's very important to understand a term as it is in spirituality. Otherwise, what the teacher is saying, what the student understands, something else only. Just like I gave the example, Brahma. The word Brahma means so many things. Now what usage the teacher is using, that one doesn't know. And something else one will understand. So he is clarifying, okay, what is karma now? So very nice definition of karma is given. Bhuta bhava udbhava karaha. Visargaha karma. Karma means creation. Visarga. Creation of what? Bhuta bhava. The beings are created that creative process is called as karma. So now two standpoints this line has. One is that the karma is the karma of the Lord who creates this whole universe, where so many beings and creatures and all of them are coming into play. And second is that same creative force, Kriya Shakti, which is there in the Supreme, is there in each one of us also. So we are also creating. So Gurudev used to explain this in a very beautiful way with 3 words. He would say that plants, they respond. So they respond to stimuli. They don't have conscious choice. So sunlight is there, they respond. If after some time the sunlight is not coming from here, it's coming from there, they will respond, they will turn there. So plants, they respond to the stimuli. Animals and birds, they act. And they are pushed by impulse and instinct to act. But he would say only human being can work. Why? Because the conscious choice one can employ. What should I do? What should I not do? So the instinct and impulse can be intelligently controlled, directed or guided. So in short, intelligent action is called as work. And behind that work, what is the creativity? What is the creative urge behind that work? Does it produce anything of value to oneself, to others around? Then that is called as work. So that creative force, because of which anything gets produced, that is called as karma. It's not the gross action. Because gross action is only a manifestation of the thought. And this can be seen in everything that we do. All our actions. If you have come here, you have walked, you have travelled, and now you are sitting here and you are listening, that is called action. But what is the work? The energy, the creative force because of which you felt inspired. You said, I must go, I must listen, I must learn, I must get the knowledge, I must change myself. That entire thing which prompted the action, that creative force behind the action is called as work actually. Now why this is also important to know, there are spiritual implications of this, but also the day-to-day implication of this is that work originates first in the mind. Inspiration comes first. Then the thinking happens. Then the action manifests. Are we conscious of this whole process? If we are conscious of this whole process, we will do things which will keep us inspired. Then life becomes very meaningful, purposeful. I look forward to my life. Many times we complain, no, so much of work is there, heavy amount of work is there, work is exhausting, work is tiring, work is stressful. That's because I have forgotten the creative part, I have forgotten the inspiring part, I am stuck in the action part now. It may be that sometimes the volume of work is quite a lot, time is very less, one is pressurized. But more of that stress part comes because psychologically we lose the sense of inspiration. We lose the creativity and we get stuck with the actual execution part, boss. So very nicely he says, Bhuta bhava udbhava karaha visarga karma samhita. So just the one word, visarga. Karma is defined as visarga. Visarga means special creation. And what is created? Bhuta bhava. That which creates. So from the totality standpoint, which creates the whole creation. That urge, creative urge in the Lord, which made the whole creation also manifest. So we say that 3 powers are there. Jnana Shakti, Ichha Shakti and Kriya Shakti. And all of us have these 3 powers. Jnana Shakti is the power of knowledge. Ichha Shakti is the power of desire. And Kriya Shakti is the power of action. Now in these three powers, which is the subtlest power? Ichha Shakti. Ichha Shakti will not come into being till Gyan is there. I must know what to desire. Even suppose I see something, that knowledge that I am getting, then that will make me desire. Or if I have already known something from my past memory, I recollect and then I desire. I cannot desire something which I don't know at all. Gyan Shakti is the subtlest, power of knowledge. Based on my power of knowledge is the Ichha will which will arise. I must have it, it will make my life happy, this is necessary, this is important, whatever. So then I start desiring. And when that power of desire I sustain, then it will manifest into action. So I will start doing something about it. If I don't desire, if I don't sustain that desire, it will end there. So beautiful concept. This is Gyan, Ichha and Kriya. And the whole life goes by this. Gyan Shakti, Ichha Shakti, Kriya Shakti. Now what happens to us in life? We get stuck with Kriya Shakti. Do. And we are pushed by Ichha Shakti. Why I am doing so much? Because I want to fulfill desires. But those desires are covering the real Gyan in us. In the third chapter we saw. The knowledge of the self is covered because of the desires only. That so much extroverted I have become that I can't sit quietly. At the body level I become so restless. Desire level, mind level also become very restless. So then I find it difficult to sit quietly. That's why Karma Yoga etc. is to make this Ichha Shakti sattvic. So through action I can slowly turn it to selfless desire. Not desire for my gratification, but for the welfare of more and more people or the people around me or whatever is my cause. I dedicate myself to that. And then that person becomes ready for Gyan. So this power of knowledge is very beautiful in all of us. And all the three powers are there in us. I don't know if you are aware, but in management they have this concept called Ask Triangle. ASK. Ask Triangle means what? A is for attitude. It will be on top, A. And then S on the left side, skill. And K on the right side is knowledge. Attitude, skill, knowledge. Ask Triangle. And in that they put A on the top because one may have skill and knowledge, but if one's attitude is not proper, one will not be able to perform well. There they are referring to knowledge as the secular, worldly knowledge. Skill based knowledge. How to operate a computer, how to operate a machine, what are the various things I must know to make a decision, all that. So attitude, skill and knowledge. It is nothing but Ichha Shakti, Kriya Shakti and Jnana Shakti. Three beautiful concepts of Vedanta. I am not saying they have copied it from there, but I am just drawing parallel. That even in management they have a Ask Triangle. So these three powers. Hence the work here is defined as Visarga, some special creation which gives joy to us. And that's why one of the beautiful definitions of work is love made visible. All else is mere labor. I'm just dragging myself through that labor if I don't have the love inside. For a mother to cook, to clean, to maintain the house, to bring up the children, the family, take care of them, it is so much of love. Same thing you tell somebody else to do. Very difficult for them. Because that love part is not there. Then it is labor. So Visarga Karma Samnitaha. So in my work, this power which is there within me is also the power of the Lord. The power to desire, the power to know, the power to act. So 3 questions he has answered. Brahman, what is Brahman? Is the supreme imperishable truth. What is Adhyatma? Is the same truth in my own heart as the self which enlivens the whole body, mind, intellect. And then what is Karma? Any special creation which brings joy to us. That is called as Karma. Now the 4th question he says, Adhibhutam Ksharo Bhavaha. What is Adhibhuta? Adhibhuta means this whole world. Bhuta literally means element. 5 elements. They are called Pancha Mahabhuta. So this whole world is made up of 5 elements. And it is perishable. So Adhibhuta means that world which we see all around us, made up of 5 elements, which is constantly perishing, which is changing. Adhibhutam Kshara. Kshara means perishing, changing. Adhibhutam Ksharo Bhava. So one of the definitions of this world, the Jagat, is Jayate, that which is born. Gachati, which goes. In between, it appears as though it stays. Tishtati iva. It is actually constantly changing. Every minute, every second is constant change happening. We can't see that because of the limitation of our senses. But it is just every minute creating, destroying, creating, destroying. So creation and destruction are going on simultaneously in this whole universe. And moment by moment everything is changing. That changing world is called as Adhibhuta. So that is the 4th one. Yeah. Purushascha Adhidaivatam. That is the 5th one. That what is Adhidaiva? That the faculties in each one of us to see, hear, taste, smell, touch, feel, think, they are called as Adhidaiva. Purushascha Adhidaivatam. Meaning, the eye by itself cannot see, the ear by itself cannot hear. The vision, the capacity to see, the capacity to hear, taste, smell, touch is enlivened by the self, which was said earlier. But this capacity to see is manifesting through the eye. That faculty of vision is called as Adhidaiva. Why is this being said here? Is because in and through all of these, also we can experience the divine. We just wait, some special experience it will be to realize the truth. But truth is simpler than the simplest and is right here in front of us. But we can't experience it because we have some notion. So he is explaining all these, saying that a person who is a yogi, who has integrated his mind, intellect, in each of these experiences of seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, also experiences the divine only. So not only is the cause of the universe supreme, but that same universe, same cause is manifesting as the whole universe. It appears to us as constantly changing and perishing, but the very fact that it is changing and perishing means that there is something which is changeless, which is supporting it. And where can I experience it? In and through all my transactions. So the eye is a physical organ, but the vision, the capacity to see, is a special faculty which is there in the mind. And this is also he is explaining, because he will explain this when he goes ahead, that how this goes out of this body when we drop the body. So all these come with us. The faculty of seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, they all come with us. Because some people believe that they get destroyed. How can they get destroyed? Because if they get destroyed, in the next life, how will the person see? Because the faculty only is not there. And this is one of the reasons why people are scared also to do organ donation. Because they say, if I donate my eyes in the next life, I can't see. Faculty of seeing comes with us. Eye we are donating. And the faculty of seeing which is there in that person will start manifesting through this eye. So these faculties, Adhidaiva, in Vedanta technical terminology it is said that there are devatas who are governing, they are called presiding deities who govern the functioning of these. And one starts imagining weird kind of things. Oh God, there is one Indra Devata controlling my hand. There is one Varun Devata controlling my tongue. That's why I am telling you, Swamiji, I don't like brinjal because I think Varun Devata is playing some trick with me. Nothing like that happened. That's just a dramatization. That Indra, Varuna and Vayu and all these different devatas are there. Basically they are faculty. They are called phenomenal forces in the creation. And those forces are working in us also. The capacity to see, hear, taste, smell and touch. Idea is that it doesn't function on its own. This by itself is inert. Body is by itself inert. So Purushascha Adhidaivatam. That faculty in us is called as Adhidaiva. And this sixth one here is Adhiyajna. What is Adhiyajna? In the olden days, a yajna used to be where it's a fire ritual. So people sit around and then they chant the mantras, and in the fire the oblations are offered, a particular deity is invoked and the blessing is sought. Now that external depiction is actually a method for a person to understand the inner functioning of one's own personality. So this body is like that Havan Kund. And the mind is the fire. The ghee and the oblation which is offered are all the sense objects which are being offered. When the ghee is offered, what happens to that fire? That fire increases. Same way, when these objects are poured into the mind, we see something exciting. So nice. Mind gets excited. The fire is getting more and more stronger. Who are the people who are offering? They are the Pandits. Who are the Pandits in us? The sense organs. The eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin. I forgot one. Which one? Eyes, ear, nose, tongue, skin. All five. You are alert. Good. So all the five, they are the Pandits who sit around and they offer oblation. Now that Havan is going on, continuously that Havan is going on in us. So it is Adhiyajño ahameva atra dehe deha vritambar. And in this act of perception, constantly where the objects are being poured in, typically what happens when we do a Havan, we forget the deity and the purpose for which the Havan is being done. We get stuck with the mantra and the offering. And if we have to count, then we get stuck with the counting. So let us say we are doing Mrityunjaya Havan. Om Trambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukam Vibandhana Mrityor Mukshi Amamrita At Swaha Idam Namama. So then the samagri is there, and then you are counting also, and then fire also is there, and you have to be very careful. And in that one has forgotten that the deity or the Lord to whom we are praying, who is that Lord? What is my prayer? For whom is that prayer? We forget all that. There was one Havan in which the father and the son were sitting, and the father and our son both were doing the Havan. At the end of the Havan, you have to offer Naivedya also into the Havan. So the father gave one laddu to the son. He had one laddu. He said, see, at the end of this, when they say Swaha, you have to put this laddu in. He said, okay, daddy. So then the Panditji also chanted the whole mantra, and then he said Swaha. So the father offered the laddu, and he said Swaha, he offered the laddu. And the son, he ate the laddu and he said, Aha. He said the fire is there inside my belly also, I am going to eat it. So generally we forget that who is that indweller. So he says, Adhiyajnam ahameva atra dehe. In your own body, I am there. The deity which you are propitiating, that happiness which one is propitiating, is in our own self. Dehe dehabhritambara. And you have got a human body. Dehabhrita means a person who has got a human body, specifically in this context. Literally, Dehabhrita means anybody who has a body. But who has the capacity to know that I am a human is only us. A dog doesn't know it is a dog. Cat doesn't know it is a cat. But we know that I am a human. So he says, having got that capacity to know your equipment, that this is a human body, I am that inner happiness which you are seeking through all your sense perceptions. And where is it? Atra. Here itself. Here and now is that inner happiness. Where are you seeking it outside? Even if we do any kind of sense indulgence, one should know that that is only to make the mind just quieten down, that's all. You just see the example of Havan is so nice, because when we stop pouring the ghee and the oblation, what happens? That fire slowly becomes, the intensity reduces and it becomes less. Same way, we keep on offering how much sense objects and indulgence and so many things in the mind. The mind is so disturbed, it can't recognize its own nature as happiness. But if that control comes into us, we realize that my nature is to be a Sakshi. Objects are being poured into the mind is getting excited, objects are stopped, the mind is getting quiet. I remain unaffected. I am that witness who doesn't get affected at all. So the last one, Adhiyajna, is the witness, the Sakshi who watches this entire action of offering, perception, enjoyment, everything. Dehe dehabhritambara. Now he has said these six. Now if you connect these six, they are very nice. Brahman is the imperishable absolute truth, cause of the whole universe. That same Brahman is manifesting in our own individuality as the self. That is called Svabhava, my own Atma. That same Brahman is also the cause of the whole universe. So the act of creation is called as work. And hence, through that work, every action of mine, I can actually understand that this is an expression of the creative spirit of that Supreme Brahman. So work happens through me, work does not happen by me. So even through work I am connected to that Brahman only. Then Adhibhutam Ksharobhava. This entire world which is perishable is Adhibhuta, and through this perishable world also I understand that because this is perishing, there has to be something which is imperishable. And in this perishing world, Purushascha Adhidaivatam, my senses have a limitation, so I am not able to see the perishing nature of the world. There is an imperishable truth, and the senses are able to function also is because of that Brahman manifesting as the faculty of seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching through the equipment. Like the electricity is manifesting in this bulb as light, in that AC as cool air, in some computer as whatever, the analog and digital signals. So, electricity is only manifesting. Though these are all different, in the same way, seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, touching, all of them are manifestation of one Brahman. And that Brahman, how do I realize that? As the Sakshi within me. That in and through all the perception, I realize that this is an act of yajna which is happening. I am only a witness. I am not affected by whatever happens. Now these six aspects are actually expressions of one Supreme Brahman. Manifesting as the six. And if you see these six, they are actually divided. Two factors are of the Lord. Can you identify which are the two factors which indicate the Lord? So it could be Brahman and Adhyatma also, but in this context we have to say Brahman and Adhi-yajna speak about the Lord. Because in a yajna we propitiate a deity, right? So here also we are propitiating that same Brahman as the self within. The jiva or the individual is indicated by Adhyatma and Adhidaivata, the sense faculties of hearing, tasting, smelling, touching. And the Jagat is indicated by Karma and Adhibhuta. Bhuta Bhava Udbhava Karaha and Adhibhuta, which is the perishable world, the five elements. So all the three, Jiva, Jagat and Ishvara, are indicated with two factors. And what is the point of indicating this? The main point is that we see oneness in all the three or all the six. So whole life actually becomes our sadhana. This is the beautiful vision of spirituality which does not exclude anything. Only if I go to a temple, I am doing spiritual practice is a limited view of spirituality. Whether I am working, whether I am gaining knowledge, whether I am desiring, whether I am indulging, no matter what I am doing, there is only one Brahman which is manifesting through everything. So a devotee or a realized master is one whose vision is on that which is imperishable, in and through all this which is perishing. That is what he said, Prayana kale pichamam te vidur yukta chetasaha. Such people will know me because their mind is united. United with what? In this context, it is united with this deeper vision. That in this world there is nothing apart from that Supreme Brahman. Brahman is in my actions also, Brahman is in my sense faculties, Brahman is in my indulgence, Brahman is in my thoughts, in my desires, Brahman is in the world outside, Brahman is the self in me, Brahman is the witness in me. Everything is only one Brahman. So I am never non-spiritual. So if somebody says I am not spiritual or spiritual, this is not, I am not practicing spirituality right now. One does not know it, but one is doing it. Because every action is spiritual. There is nothing excluded. Now these six when he has answered, the attempt of a seeker is to get this vision of oneness in and through any of these six. So if I am seeing nature, my mind should go to Brahman. If I am eating food, my mind should go to Brahman. If I am reading something, my mind can go to Brahman. That is, eye has a faculty of reading because of the Brahman. Mind can understand because of Brahman. It's just a little thought which has to come to us. Then slowly our tuning with that becomes stronger. In the language of devotion, this was said earlier in 7th chapter, that I am the sapidity in the water and I am the smell of the earth and I am the intelligence of the intelligent and all that. That is much more simpler expression. This is a little subtler expression, but both are actually one and the same. So the vision of life is I must get this vision of oneness. And that can I have this idea that whatever I am doing, let me have the thought that this is Brahman and I am that Brahman. Now coming to the 7th one, see, a person who strives for this kind of a vision is a seeker. Suppose that person doesn't realize this vision while living. The scripture here says that even at the moment of death, if that person gets this vision, that person is free. So the 7th question Arjuna had asked, that how is it that at the last moment also if he thinks about you, he will become free? Bhagavan explains that now. And this is a very important verse of this whole chapter, is verse number 5. अंतकाले च मामेव स्मरन् मुक्त्वा कलेवरम् यः प्रयाति समद्भावम् याति नास्त्यत्र संशयः. So he says, Antakale cha, even at the last moment. That word cha is there, no? You should underline that word cha. In this whole shloka, that one word is one alphabet actually is very important. Cha, which means also. Antakale cha mameva. Smaran muktva kalevaram. At the last moment also, if he is striving to get this, and he drops the body. Yah prayati, whoever departs like that, in the language of devotion, thinking about the Lord, taking the name of the Lord, visualizing His form, or thinking about His glories, His attributes, any of these. If a person drops the body, yah prayati sa mad bhavam, with that bhav, for me, yati na asti atra samshaya. That person attains me. There is no doubt in this. This verse is misunderstood also very many times. That do anything in life and last minute take Bhagwan's name and you will be free. Now what is the logic behind this? Why does he say this? And what is the beauty of this whole shloka? That we will see tomorrow.